that sucks.
Yeah.
I always told my children, and I'm lucky because my one bad child, my oldest son, doesn't like whiskey. So
Good for him.
I was lucky. He likes other things, but he's just like, I don't like that. But if he liked it, it would all be gone. You know what I mean? Kind of thing. He's not a respectful human being as far as that goes. But as far as I told them all, I said, drink it. If you put water in it, that will be a reason that even if you're 18 or 21 or whatever age you are, I'll still physically punish you if you put water in my whiskey. It's just that simple. I mean, I have enough whiskey that if they wanted to come down and have whatever they want, I would have no problem with it. It's like, ask me to take a bottle to a party. I have no problem with it. Don't put water in my whiskey. It's just that simple. That's the rule.
Yeah.
Dant Crossing, Gethsemane, Kentucky. Timeless hospitality that stirs the spirit. Dant Crossing is a one-of-a-kind destination for unforgettable weddings, memorable corporate events, day trips, and weekend getaways. The pastoral campus is anchored by Log Still Distillery and includes an amphitheater that seats 2,000, a 12-acre lake for fishing and unique lodging options, creating an immersive experience that's rooted in the community and culture of our little slice of Kentucky. More attractions will open soon at Dant Crossing, including our 21,000 square foot distillery, which we will have the ability to produce 15,000 barrels of spirit each year, a network of wooded walking trails, fully functional private train depot, farm-to-table restaurant, and the Legacy, a premier wedding and events venue. Whether you're looking to host an event, book a stay, or reserve a tasting, we're ready to welcome you. Learn more at dantcrossing.com.
Record on this.
Recording in progress.
You tried to make it go. All right. So what it was it was picking up my Facebook, right? Okay. So, all right. If people on Facebook Live, we're getting ready. We should get going. I'm going to be monitoring that in a second. You were monitoring it too. But Kerry Moynahan of the Barrel Room Chronicles is joining us tonight. We're recording. Welcome everybody on YouTube right now. And we're going to get ready to get going. Now, when I start the audio, what I do is there's a 30-second spot for the Spirit of French Lick. Alan Bishop at the Spirit of French Lick. Bishop,
go Alan.
They sponsor the podcast. And then also Alan has his, if you have Ghost, you have everything, or the One Step at a Time Distillers Institute, which he also has that we put an ad on also. So what I do is I usually play this 30-second spot. We're quiet. And then I go into our theme song, and that starts the podcast for audio. And then we're basically live on Facebook, YouTube, and recording the podcast for Apple and
all the others.
Yes. All right. So far, the three-wing circus is working, right? All right, let's go. I've got that on. That's ready to go. I got to make sure the YouTube is. Oh, it is. All right, so let's get ready to start recording on the audio.
Get ready to rumble.
3, 2.
This is Alan Bishop, head alchemist at Spirits of French Lick. Be on the lookout for our brand new bottled and bond Solomon Scott rye whiskey, made from a mash composed of 65% rye, 35% corn, and 5% victory malt. This 5-year-old 100 proof rye whiskey is a throwback to early 1800s style rye whiskeys of the Ohio Valley. Named after the legendary Daisy Spring Mill distillery owner turned moonshiner Solomon Scott of Paoli, Indiana. Remember, drink responsibly and never drink and drive.
Sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew. Man, we talk some shit, but we're telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, raisins and
All right. Welcome to another podcast of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. That was Kenny Fuller of the Old Americana Luca Mariano band. Thank you, Kenny. I almost every single time have to thank him for singing a theme song for us. I mean, how cool is that? And then
Pretty cool.
Tonight we have a very special guest, Kerry Moynahan of the Barrel Room Chronicles. Welcome her. Woo!
Hello.
And also, it's kind of a cool, let's see, I gotta get this back to full screen. All right, there we go. Yeah, and this is kind of a cool podcast. One, I've kind of got a little bit of an advantage because we've already done the Barrel Room Chronicles with, one time before. So when we went into this, you were probably, we probably didn't know a lot about each other. And well, spending a little bit of time doing that podcast, we have a little bit more background doing this.
Right.
So I have the
and for everybody out there who wants to see that podcast, it will air on May 10th. May 10th coming up.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to how I embarrass myself, like I always do. It's always strange when I do enjoy watching myself on somebody else's podcast. And I don't know, do you watch your own podcasts?
Oh, well, I do because, I edit them. But then after they're posted, I usually just listen to them in the car to make sure that it sounds the same, same quality sound on the audio part as it does on the video part. Because then if it does, I always check, my earphones and stuff, but I feel like the system I have in my edit bay here is a lot better than my car, even though my car's not too old. It's 2017. But I like to listen to it and see, okay, if it sounds good, great. Okay. And then if it sounds really bad, I'll take it down and redo it because I'm not going to let it sit, like that.
Yeah. But, oh, I don't know. I usually watch it to try to figure out how I can get better. When I first started, I started with an art podcast. Okay. And the early art podcasts were horrible. I don't know. I think in one podcast I said like 565 ums.
You know what? That's a common thing. And let me start with a little bit of history on Barrel Room Chronicles and how it came to be. I've been a whiskey aficionado and a certified bourbon steward for a while now, and it's always been I got into all these clubs and groups, and I've just been enjoying whiskey of all kinds: bourbon, Scotch, rye, Japanese, Irish, Indian, all of it. That's all fantastic to me. So I like to broaden my horizons and try to taste as many world whiskeys as possible. Like I'm trying to taste all the bourbons and ryes of America, but I'm also trying to taste all of the Irish whiskeys, which is now booming. It used to only have 2 distilleries. And now it's got, I don't know, upwards of 30 or 40.
So what it was hold on. Oh. There we go. I knew what it was that time.
So now the train left the station. Say the same thing.
You're talking about the Irish whiskeys and how many, there was only 2.
Right.
And it's exploding.
So basically, I just love all whiskeys. I love tasting all whiskeys. I like checking out each style of whiskey. I like, some bourbons better than others. I like some ryes better than others. I like some scotches better than others. But then it's like, then you have to decide, well, which category do you like better than which category? And then sometimes you're like, oh, wait, I just had these 2 bourbons that just really rocked my world that kind of beat out those scotches, or I had these 2 Irish whiskeys that actually beat out that Japanese whiskey. And it's just kind of like watching all of the evolution of all the different whiskey makers as they grow and expand and experiment. It's just been really an exciting ride. But anyway, I digress. So I was in all of these clubs doing the whiskey thing. Then I started pitching some whiskey shows. I had one option by Jack Osborne's company a few years ago. And they had the option for about a year, didn't quite make it to, but I did get a lot of notes back from all the different cable channels that were interested in it. So I started another one, and then we were filming in March of 2020, and we had just completed a crowdfunding. We were filming, we had it about halfway shot, and the state of California said, you must go home now and lock your doors and stay inside. And I thought, okay, well, they said 2 weeks. Let's see how it goes. 2 weeks goes by. We're still sitting at home. 2 more weeks go by. We're still sitting at home. So I said to my partner at the time, I said, we just took all this money from people. I said, we should start a podcast because at least we can like give back to our audience while we're sitting here at home doing nothing else. So we started Spirits of Whiskey. We did 2 seasons, a total of 57 episodes. It's a great time. We started on Anchor using their on their phone technology, which at first seemed kind of cool, doing audio only. And then we started researching more and more equipment, and then more software came available, more equipment came available. And then pretty soon, you were handed all this great equipment for next to nothing, sometimes nothing. And so by the time we finished the 2nd season of Spirits of Whiskey, we were ready to go full on video on every platform, out there. And, but then with, everybody going back to work, and I work in entertainment. And if anybody out there works in entertainment or knows somebody that works in entertainment, the hours are not 9 to 5. They're not even 8 to 7. I mean, it's, you're 10 to 12 to 16 hours a day, sometimes every day. So when I went back to work, I was like, well, I can't schedule myself with my co-host. So we had to dissolve the show, but I didn't want to dissolve the show. So I did a spinoff, which is now Barrel Room Chronicles, now in season 2. And it's been, okay, I finished work at midnight. I'm going to work on the podcast for a couple of hours here and go to bed at 3 and then get up and, so it's been like, there's no way I could have expected my old co-host to come along with me with this, because it's been so hard to keep the schedule the way it is, but it's been fun. And then, in between shows that I work on, I was able to go to Ireland this last October, and we shot 12 to 14 episodes. Maybe even more than that, because it depends, because we did get a lot of footage, so I might have some extra episodes on it. But right now we have 3 episodes out. Next Wednesday morning rather, we put out our 5th episode. And our 4th episode, I'm sorry. We have 3 out right now. We started airing in March. And the idea now this year is, first we went from an all audio podcast. Then I was an all video podcast doing what we're doing, you and I, where it's, remote, but looking great. And then now I'm trying this year to do everything, or as close to everything as I can, at least 90% on location. So I actually just got back from Hawaii, where lo and behold, found a whiskey distillery on Oahu. Who knew? And it's veteran owned. It was a great time. We also happened upon a veterans parade, which wasn't like part of the plan. I was like, wait, we're going to a veteran owned distillery and there's a veterans parade here. So we got the parade, then we went to this Highlands games, and we got all this footage there. And the distiller was actually sponsoring. So we got just all this great stuff. I met a great bunch of people. Hawaii was fantastic. So if anyone wants to go to Hawaii, and you can they do have distilleries in Hawaii. So who knew? But yeah, that's the long and the short of it.
Our one of my co-podcasters, Whisky, went to Hawaii and found that distillery. He was more excited about the fact that you could get Blanton's anywhere in Hawaii.
In Hawaii, yeah.
He couldn't believe what the selection was. It wasn't a big selection, but what was there was very, very interesting, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, so he had a lot of
he probably saw it at the ABC store. The ABC store has everything you'd ever want. Anything, everything. And I haven't been to Hawaii, and I'm going to age myself here, for 33 years. But the last time I was there, well, both times I was there 35 years ago and 33 years ago. All the shopping ABC stores. And I remember when I went 35 years ago, I was with my family, and we went to this place on Maui, and they had this coconut syrup for the pancakes, and it was out of this world. And when I told my roommate, I said, I got to get some coconut syrup. He goes, coconut syrup? I said, oh, you've never been to Hawaii? He said, no. What's coconut syrup? I said, well, it's like, maple syrup, but it's coconut syrup. It's for pancakes. He goes, what? So I said, you watch, the ABC store will have it. And I'm used to the ABC store from, 35 years ago, having a can where you had to take the little triangle thing and pop it on each side. And I got home yesterday and I called my mom. I said, Mom, I found the syrup. She goes, oh, great. And I said, it's not in cans anymore. She goes, what? But you had to put the thingy. And I said, no, now it's in a plastic bottle. It looks like, Mrs. Butterworth or whatever, but without the face. So So yes, I did have some in my breakfast this morning. Fantastic. Loved it. So anybody out there who hasn't tried coconut syrup, if you like coconut, oh, so good.
It's right up there with bourbon barrel aged syrup.
That too. Like honestly, the only
yeah.
syrup I have is either whiskey barrel aged syrup of some sort, mostly bourbon, or coconut syrup. Like I don't
Yes.
even have any like off the store shelf syrup anymore.
I found about an hour and 15 minutes away, Ohio syrup maker who ages his barrels, his syrup in new riff barrels.
Oh,
So it's some good syrup. And
so I
so
got some really good barrel aged syrup from Pappy and Company. Have you ever had theirs?
I've heard of it. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I do
I've
love the
seen it.
Pappy and Company. I am a twin, identical twin, and the ladies who run it are identical triplets. So also had them on the show on Spirits of Whiskey, and I love them. I love their products, and I love what they're doing with the brand. So
That's cool.
if you haven't tried their syrup, check it out.
Do it. All right. Well, just go back a little bit on categories, like you
Sure.
said, and what I've what whiskey was leading up to the bourbon boom. Scotch was, it was what the sophisticated whiskey drinker was drinking.
Yep.
And bourbon was, what would you say? It hadn't yet found its place amongst any, it had been your dad's
Right.
drink.
The resurgence hadn't quite made it.
Right.
I remember when I was in my 20s, all whiskeys were the old man drink. And I remember I worked at a entertainment news outfit back in, I worked at several between 2007 and 2010. But one of them, the pop culture lady gave me a book, and it was a little recipe book, and it was literally titled something like Old Man's Drinks. And it was all these like old fashioned sidecars, gimlets, like all the original things. And when I opened, I said, yeah, these are the old man drinks. There's nobody drinking this stuff. And then I thought, you know what? Why isn't anybody drinking this stuff? So I started making them, and I said, people should be making these. I don't know why they're not. And now, of course, the resurgence has come, and old fashions are back. Sidecars are coming back. All these things are coming back that weren't being used for years.
Yeah, 100%. But as it started to go, it put, bourbon was, it's still just unbelievable. There's nobody waiting in line at a liquor store for scotches when they're getting released in America. It's just not something that you get a lot of people waiting in line, especially here in the Midwest. There's the scotch that we got fantastic scotches on the shelf here, but you walk in and you buy it. You're not waiting for the scotch on delivery day here in Ohio and in Kentucky and in this area. It's just not something that's happening. Everybody
it's the bourbon
in there,
capital. You're down with the bourbons. You guys want the bourbons.
Yeah, and just like Buffalo Trace products are very popular in Ohio, and right now I'm drinking some Chicken Cock Double Oak.
Greg Schneider right there, responsible.
Yes, courtesy of
Love
Greg
Greg Schneider.
This bottle this bottle is Greg right here.
And it's gorgeous. I mean, look at those beautiful like Starburst sun, whatever those are on the top.
Yeah, the gorgeous. Bottle's beautiful, the brand's beautiful. This one is not this one is a double oak, and this was a sourced whiskey that Greg took and put back into charred oak barrels, brand new, to keep it. I think actually that might have been, he put them in charred new oak barrels, but this was already aged in used barrels when it was made. So it's a very unique bourbon, and or not a bourbon, it's double oak whiskey, right? Kentucky whiskey. That's what it is. It's not bourbon.
Greg, are you on the chat still? Are you going to tell us if he's right?
I think Greg, I haven't noticed. I think he might have
out.
Failed. He comes in and out.
Oh, no audio coming across, he said.
What?
Your website locked up a minute. Still listening. No audio.
Okay.
Uh-oh. Well, that's not good.
Wait, that's got to be pretty much.
Hello.
Let's
Maybe
see.
when
Hold on.
you
View. Let's go back. Oh no, right down here. I'll view. I go back to exit full screen. I got my audio. You talk.
I can hear you. Can you hear
Yeah,
me?
we have audio. I don't know why.
Can you
Wait, I could
all
tell you.
hear us
Wait, hold
now?
on. We have audio. No, that's the audio. It must be something on Greg's end, because that was Facebook. And you could hear that there was audio, right? You heard that?
Oh, I hear it now. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway.
Okay.
Well, if you can't hear us now, go back to the recording later and watch it again.
Yeah, we're definitely. Well, it should be once it goes on to Facebook, it will dump back on. But I don't know why I don't think we actually lost. From what I can tell, we shouldn't have lost audio. We're not losing audio. We're producing the audio there, and our microphones are working.
No, and I see on Facebook it's got the caption. So
yeah,
I don't. If you can't hear us, read us. I don't know.
There we go. Anyways, so this double oak is something that, where you got a master distiller, the brand picks up some whiskey that is very, they picked up whiskey that was some really, that was for their brand, and then they added their own touch by putting it into new charred oak barrels to age it more. And then Greg's palate's so refined that I don't usually anything that they're putting out I like. He'll tell me if he likes it, because sometimes he's he understands that you don't put there's so many people who like so many different types of bourbons and whiskeys and that type and ryes and all that maybe you don't like it, but he has to make it for the people that do like it.
Yeah,
right.
Everything I've had that Greg made, everything they sent us when we, I've gotten a few things off the shelf, but when he sent a bunch of stuff when we had him on Spirits of Whiskey, everything, it was fantastic. Everything was great. And if you guys haven't heard Greg's voice, go back and listen to either my episode or Jeff's episode, because he's got a voice for radio. Oh my God. Like, great voice. Like, he should, like, if he didn't do whiskey, that's what he should be, a radio guy.
He's been on the podcast, I think 7 times now.
Yeah.
And then we basically have been going down to Kentucky, taking a bus tour the week of Kentucky Bourbon Festival. Nice. And we always stop off. So we've tasted his new make. And when we go this September, his new make that we tasted initially will now be being bottled, and it'll be bourbon. It's 4 years old.
Wow.
So
that's
he,
awesome.
He's got stuff that's older and whatnot, but overall, that's kind of cool to be able to taste it every single year as it goes through. He lets us taste what he's distilling now and then what he's aging. And so we go through that tasting once. I think the first year we did it twice, and then every year we've done it at least once a year to taste, the evolution of basically a whiskey, a bourbon. So it's kind of a cool thing.
It is a cool thing. So I know you travel a lot, because I see all these things pop up and you're in a car with somebody and you're driving around with somebody. So, like, tell me, well, this isn't my podcast, it's yours, but I'm still curious. How often do you travel for whiskey? Because I know you have a full-time job. So I always go like, how is he getting time off for this?
Now I'm going to get myself in trouble. I work for my cousins, and what would you say? I've been working there for 18 years, so I have a certain amount of vacation time, and my vacation time usually is tied in with bourbon stuff. So let's take the last trip, which wouldn't have been a bourbon trip, but I went back to Wisconsin, and there's
bourbon there.
I had a fantasy baseball draft. I grew up in Wisconsin, so we were going back home to see family and friends, but a lot of my friends had purchased our barrel pick, the William Dalton barrel pick.
Are you gonna show us that bottle? Show us that bottle.
It's right here. Wow.
That's gorgeous. I love that label. So pretty.
Yeah, the French Licks labels are pretty damn good. So I went back but I had my fantasy baseball draft on Thursday. So that's one of the reasons why the trip happened, because I'll go back I've been doing this since 1986 with the baseball. And
since you were a baby. Good.
Pretty much close to, it was actually the first draft we ever did was the night of my rehearsal dinner, and got me in trouble.
Oh boy.
Because it lasted way longer than I thought. I didn't know.
And you're with the same wife?
What?
You're with the same wife?
Yes.
Oh, she's a saint.
It's Roxy she definitely
knows
still
you,
on the
she
podcast.
knows you and loves you, and that's awesome.
It's been a long that was 1986. So we're getting close to what is it, 40, right? Yeah, let's not rush it.
I'm gonna ask, which one of these whiskeys is your fountain of youth? Because there's no way you could be that old.
I'm that old. It's just like, but I do everything possible to not look that old or act. I try not to act that old. What?
Do you moisturize?
Do I moisturize? I do yes, I probably do everything women do to look young. I understand, I get a lot of shit at work for using Just for Men, that's for sure, because as it starts to grow out, it really is, when I first started using it, it was just kind of keeping it at bay, but now it's just like full out. If I ever stopped dyeing this thing, I would just shave it off and just not have it, because I couldn't handle it. It's Santa Claus color there.
The whole thing, really?
What?
The whole thing?
Oh yeah.
Wow. Well, maybe at Christmas time you should.
No,
like October,
maybe
at
not.
Halloween.
No.
At Halloween you just
so I'm
kinda
supposed
let
to
go,
look. So I'm
and
supposed
then by Christmas you can go sit and make an extra couple bucks at the mall and have some kids sit on your lap, and then you give them a little whiskey and send them on their way.
So I'm a big guy, and so usually people look to me to help them move and do heavy lifting stuff, and I'm getting to the point where I have to bow out of it. But the thing is if I did look and take my age in fully, I could probably get out of it. But because I look so young, they half the time my kids don't let me out of it. Nobody lets me out of it. I
actually have to help somebody move on Monday, and I was like, oh, okay, because I have a bad back. I have herniated disc in my back and my neck, and while I was in Hawaii, I was doing a lot of walking, which was great for me, except for then I had so much luggage because of the equipment I brought. Like the big bag was at 50 pounds, and the small bag was at 35 pounds. And, I'm lugging all the stuff, and I have the backpack, which doesn't matter how much it was because it was going to fit on the overhead compartment anyway. And that's where I had like a bulk of the gear, which is not light. And I was like, okay, well, all right, if I put the backpack on my back and walk long enough, the lower back isn't hurting because it's offsetting the weight from the front of me to the back of me. But then my back and my neck hurt. It's like, I hate getting old, man. It's like, why?
This is how it goes. One kid will decide they're going to move. I got to move them to a storage area. Then and usually they're moving because they're breaking up. So all the friends that would have helped move, the breakup's happening. So my daughter is like, okay, so I'm just the one. All of a sudden I'm the only one.
Right. Because then they have to take sides. They don't want to. So they just say later, I'm out.
So I do all the moving. My back goes out, which my lower back and my back, and I'll then spend the next 2 months after the move going to the chiropractor, doing the stretches, doing everything, get it back into feeling good.
Then someone else moves.
You got it. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah,
my friend called and she said, I need your help moving. And I was like, she's like, no, get those guys you got. I just need you to supervise because I don't want to be alone with them. And I was like, okay, that I can handle.
Yeah, especially if they have friends or whatever. I don't mind driving the truck. I have a pickup truck. I can do that. But somehow, and then if she's doing it, then I start to feel guilty making her do all the work. It's just my grandkids are.
Oh, why did you say that?
What?
You really aged yourself now.
Yeah.
Your grandkids who are 1 month old.
No, my oldest grandson just turned 8.
Oh my God, Jeff.
I have an 8, my 7-year-old granddaughter lives with us, and then my son helps. It's like it's messed up. But anyways, my son, we force my son to do as much as he possibly can with his.
How many
his daughter.
grandkids you got?
I have 4 right now, but my youngest just is due August 17th, and we found
So
out it's going to be another
How many
boy.
kids?
So
How many kids do you have?
I had 4 kids. So
4 kids, and do all of them
2
have a kid?
No, 3 of them. One almost has a kid because that's August 17th.
Right.
But then my oldest daughter has 3 boys, and my oldest son has a daughter. My middle daughter, is out in Portland working in the wine industry, and she does not have any
Nice.
children or
Nice.
technically any spouse to write home about.
Hey, you know what? It's cheaper for you because they
It's
always
her.
call.
No, she's wonderful. We always hope, but at the same time, she does her thing, and
That's
she does
awesome.
it well.
Does she like whiskey at all, or is she just a purely wine connoisseur?
She what is it, Freeland?
Oh yeah,
Is it
Freeland
Portland?
with Jill. Yeah.
She works out there in their
she-
tasting room on the
Okay.
weekends doing the
So she-
tastings.
Okay, so
She worked
she's into
there-
whiskey and gin. They have whiskey and gin there.
But then she works at the winery she's at, and she's cellar hand. Is that what it is?
I don't know. I'm not.
So
I
that's
was starting to
you-
get into wine, and I realized wine, no matter if I drank a drop or a bottle, would give me an instant headache, even though I love wine. And then I discovered that whiskey gets
Red?
finished in these things I love. Yes, red. I found that whiskey gets finished in a lot of these red wines, and I could handle the whiskey a lot better and still get, a hint of the wine. So
on the finished. Yeah, then my last podcast was on finished, because when we first got into this, people did not
they didn't, but
tolerate
now they do.
finished with. Well, and they absolutely do. Now, when I put it out there, are you in or out? It used to be like 90% were out and 10% might have been in. And now it's like 50-50.
Now the
at
question
least.
though is, were they out just because of the idea of it, or were they out because they actually tasted it and said no?
No,
I kind of feel
honestly,
like
I think finished bourbons are sweeter and they have more unique tastes.
but they're a
and-
different kind of sweet.
Right. No, I understand. But the people who don't like finished bourbons, they like the bourbon because they like the spice, they like the flavor
corn
of
flavor,
the oak and the wood. And so they're gonna like those bourbons that they might not even like it if it tastes like caramel. They like there's so many different levels of all the
Yeah.
different whiskeys of what people's palates pick up and taste.
Right.
For me, the reason why I don't like rye is, one, I don't like the taste of formaldehyde. No,
You
just
don't
kidding.
like rye? Oh, I'm sad now. Okay, wait,
You're
I'm
doing
having
the
some-
Irish.
I'm doing the Irish. I have, and I don't remember if this was on camera or not before, but I
No,
have the Slane,
right. Mhm.
the Slane Irish whiskey, but it's the special edition, which is celebrating the 40 years of music that they do at the Slane Castle in Ireland. I think the first concert was opened by U2 when they were first going out.
Okay.
So cheers to music and Slane Castle
And Irish whiskey.
and Irish whiskey. And this is the Irish whiskey answer to the Glencairn. I don't remember how to say it, but it's TU with little somethings on top, ATH. And it's got a really interesting bottom. It's kind of shaped like a diamond. And
Mhm.
then you can lay it on its side so you can air it out if you're going to let things.
Yeah. It's similar to the Glencairn, but it's got its own shape, so it doesn't
Right.
have to worry
So
about
so it gives you kind of the
that-
same kind of nosing, but
that
it's a different
little
style.
lip at the top is what makes it different. And then it allows you to do, there's so many
Good.
different glasses that you can go off of. I do enjoy the Glencairn because Martin Duffy
Mhm.
is a Scotchy Bourbon Boy.
Love
and he
Martin
basically
Duffy.
yes. And so basically, and then these are, when you buy them, you would think, I go into major distilleries, craft distilleries, and they're like, well, we can't have these because, whatever. And I'm just like, if my podcast can have them,
Right. That's so
you
I
can
got
have
them.
them.
I got the minis for one of the crowdfunding things for the TV show. And I was like, it wasn't that bad, and I still have some. I should have some in here, but I don't. But yeah, I mean, the minis especially, not very expensive, and they put the logo on it and everything, and it was great. And I had a bunch to give out for the, and like, it was funny because the crowdfunding company that I use, they said, oh, you shouldn't be getting things like that you have to buy. I said, oh, honey, you don't understand. People collect Glencairns. Like, if this is a Glencairn with somebody's logo on it, they're gonna donate just to get that glass, even if they don't give a crap about my show. I was like, they want the glass. And she's like, oh, really? I said, oh yeah, it's a big deal. So yes, I don't have much left.
Understanding whiskey people. Yes. One of the, so getting back to the category thing. So one, as you keep evolving and you go through, and bourbon keeps staying hot, but rye has made its point. I think American single malt in the next 5 or 6 years is going to make its point based off of barrels. 100%. It's delicious. There's no doubt about it. It's its own category, but the fact that you can make an American single malt in a used barrel just makes total sense. And it's funny because when we were talking about the finishing, okay, so you make Maker's Mark, they finish and keep it to be bourbon with their staves,
right?
But they're basically doing the same thing. They're taking a secondary barrel and finishing within the rules of bourbon. And then when you're talking about all the Oloroso casks or the Armagnac or the wines that you're talking about from the different regions or the rums,
right,
that's where you change it into a finished bourbon. Right. And
but I like, I'm going to stop you real quick just because I really like, and this is part of my story too, actually. Maker's Mark was my very first whiskey. When I graduated college, I moved to LA, and my best friend from college came down to visit. We went to San Francisco State. He came down to visit. We went to, what's the name of that? I can't think of it, but it's that famous one that's on Vermont that was in Swingers, and the lady and the guy played the piano and sang. Anyway, so we were there, and he said, have you had whiskey? I was like, oh God, the old man's drink? No, haven't had that. And he was like, okay, let's get you a Maker's Mark. So he's like, get a Maker's Mark, then we'll go up to Knob Creek, then we'll go to this. And then he goes, and if you want to start getting really crazy, we'll go into Scotch. And I was like, what? And I was like, okay. And this was the first night that I drank myself silly because I kept tasting all these things, that the next day I didn't feel hungover because I wasn't having all these fruity, sugary drinks. And I was like, oh, maybe whiskey's my thing. So that's how it all started. But Maker's Mark, love it. Denny's great. I can't wait to see what he is doing in his new position at his new place.
I'm trying to get him on.
Yeah, I know.
I've been
He's like,
talking
oh,
to him.
Ditto. He's like, well, I gotta wait. Got some secret stuff. So,
well, it's funny because he'll say, when I talk to him, he's like, call me after the first of the year. I might know more. And I'm just like, I'm not calling you after the first of the year and you might know more. Maybe I'll call you in March. Maybe I'll call you in April, but I'll give you some time because the way things work is they just don't work that fast these days.
Mm-hmm.
They get into their positions and start to go. But as far as when they start to get ready to let it go, unless you're Jackie Zecon, when you just go straight to Hidden Barn at the Neely family, and all of a sudden, the first batch gets mixed reviews, and by the time you're on the fifth batch, you're winning awards at the
exactly.
You won awards down at New Orleans. So,
speaking of New Orleans, do you ever go to Tales of the Cocktail in the summertime?
No. Why?
You should.
Where's that?
It's in New Orleans.
So getting to New Orleans is so the one thing that I haven't done since the whole world went to shit, as we talked, is fly.
Oh, at all? Really?
I love to drive. So when I'm going to all these places, it's driving. And one of the cool things about driving is you just find the places on the way. And so you usually end up stopping at 10 different places.
No, that's true. And I can't, obviously had to fly to Hawaii, but like I didn't have an interesting conversation with the guy sitting next to me like you do in the car, which, partially because the friend who invited me had already bought her flights before she said, oh, there's this Highland Festival and there's a distillery that makes whiskey. I should invite Kerry to come with me. So we went
separate.
We flew separate. Yeah. Because I had points, I had miles. So I was going to use them. And I was like, well, I can't use them against your flight, but so what? Anyway, but like, yeah, I mean, I love watching your road trip stuff, but like, what if you wanted to go to like Scotland or Ireland or India or Tanzania or
Can't drive.
no, you can't. I mean, you can drive once you get there.
So
but...
just for instance, one of the cool things that happened in Cleveland this year, Cleveland, Ohio, is there is a direct flight now to Ireland. So pretty much everybody in this area start it. So I'm thinking 2024, I'll probably plan a Scotchy Bourbon Boy trip to Ireland.
I'm going to tell you right now, make it May 1st this year because I have to go back. You should come with me. You should meet me there. We should do this. I'm going to be there for a week. I got to do some pickups. Back to way back to when I'm doing the season. As I said earlier, I'm doing a whole Irish thing for the first half of the season. And one of the episodes that we did in Northern Ireland is for McConnell's. And McConnell's, if you've ever had McConnell's Irish whiskey, they are building their distillery. They've been doing a lot of sourcing with aging and everything, like a lot of people do. But they're building their distillery out of an old like 16th or 17th century prison that has these like 3 wings, and each wing was like divided into different things, and they're allowed to do anything they want in the inside, but they can't touch the exterior walls. They can take the roof off, they can fix the roof, they can take out all the prison cells, everything, but they can't touch the walls on the outside. And the walls on the outside are gorgeous because they're like all stone.
Right. That's why they don't want them to touch
exactly.
it.
So when I went out there, we went to the construction site. We got all this great footage. Then we went and interviewed some people in a bar. We interviewed some people at this museum. It was totally fun. But I'm like, okay, but when are you guys putting in the stills? They said, well, probably in April or May. And since we can't take the walls down, we're opening the roof and they're going to crane them in. And so I said, okay, well, let me know when that's happening because I got to come back and get that. Because like, how do you not, talk about the distillery opening if you don't have the key, beautiful, I mean, it's going to be great. Like watching these cranes drop these giant copper pot stills into this 16th or 17th century old building. Like, I just can't wait. So you should come with me May 1st. Get on the plane.
Oh, that is tempting, but I probably won't be. So I am going to Chicago. No. I'm going to Indiana, Starlight, to meet Turner Wathen, who is the nephew of Charles Wathen, who does Wathen's whiskeys and bourbons. But he is mixing rye whiskey with rum.
Oh,
he's blending.
Nice.
Mixing
them or like finishing them?
Mixing them.
Wow.
He's got a thing
what do you
called
call that?
Fortuitous Union.
From?
All right. They call it Fortuitous Union, and the initials are FU, and it's for that one reason. He was on the podcast and he explained. So they bought this 12-year Barbados rum, and they were in the process of dumping that and bottling it. And when they got it, they weighed the barrels and they know how much, so when you dump out the whiskey, the barrel should be less. It was like 619 pounds. They're expecting, it was like 910 pounds.
What?
When it got dumped. And they're like, what the hell happened? Well, it turned out that the person I don't know who was doing it in Kentucky, but they dumped it into 90 gallons of Redemption Rye.
Oh my.
So they all of a sudden
like completely saturated or like what? were the staves like completely saturated and was holding all this like devil's cut? Like, what's the deal?
No, he had a barrel of rum. They were dumping it into a steel container. He had 2 barrels of 12-year-old Barbados rum, delicious as it could be, dumped it into a steel container that still had 90 gallons of redemption rye
okay, so
left
the
in
steel
it
container still had it.
accidentally. And so
Got
the
it.
place that was doing the blending, was they were like, what the hell happened? How are we got more, how is the weight more? Well, they're like, they tasted it and they're like, that's how it is. And then they found out it was redemption, 90 gallons. And so they took it out in the parking lot, him and his partner, and they were tasting it. And they're like, that's pretty good. They went back in and told them they were going to take it.
Wow.
They'll do that, right? And then spent the next 4 months arguing with the blender or the person who was doing their bottling that somehow they were supposed to pay for the 90 gallon.
Oh boy.
They're like, no, it's like, you're lucky we don't hit you with the bill and tell you to shove this up your
right.
So they put it out as fortuitous union. So then they went to do their next batch on purpose. And it was supposed to be 60% rum, not 12-year beautifully aged rum, but good rum, okay?
Right.
Mixed with 40% 95.5 why am I having a problem? MGP rye.
Right.
And all of a sudden
Are
they
you
were
still only on the chicken cock? Did you already have the Peerless?
I just did the Peerless 001. We'll talk, but so he dumps it. So they come back and they're like, why are there 2 barrels of MGP rye still here? And it's already been bottled. Okay. They're like, where did those barrels come from? And then they realized they 2-barreled short. So it went from 60-40 to 80-20. And that was their next batch. So it was another fortuitous union. And they, needless to say, stopped going there. And now they're going to do it at Starlight. So we've been invited down by Turner to come down and meet the owner of Starlight, and which they make really good bourbon there and everything, but they also bottle and blend and whatever. And they're going to be doing that on the weekend. I believe I'm going to be there the 29th and 30th of April. So May 1st.
So you can just hop on over to Ireland with me right after that. Because it sounds like your cousins just need to give you more vacation. I don't know.
Well, they don't give it to me. I just get it. That's how it works.
So I don't know, like in California, like you can accrue vacation, and then if you don't use it, it rolls over like to a certain point. And I remember when I was working at this one entertainment news outfit, they were based in it was an online platform, and they were based in Florida. And Florida has a completely different, like it's you use it or lose it in Florida. And my counterpart in Florida had all this vacation locked, like stacked up before I even started working there. And she was saving it for her wedding, which totally get it. Well, then she was gone for 2 weeks for a wedding, which meant I had to cover her shift, which meant I had to be at work at 4 a.m. Not my favorite thing. But, no traffic, fine, whatever. I'd get home at like 1, go take a nap, can have dinner with some friends, whatever. But then she had another vacation. She goes, oh, I just figured out I have another week and a half of vacation. If I don't use it, they'll not give it to me. Like in California, I think if you don't use it after a certain amount of time, they just pay you the money. And I was like, you realize you've now gone on 3 vacations, and I've been here a year, and I was not allowed to go to my friend's wedding in Australia. And I have taken no vacation because you keep taking your vacation, because they keep going, oh, well, Kerry can push hers. Kerry can push hers. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm done. I was like, I'm tired of this. I was like, I need a vacation. I missed my friend's wedding in Australia, for crying out loud. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, it's well, after 18 years and what we just went through, there's reasons, but I basically do a lot of 1 and 2 days off and use the weekend to go do these trips, because there's 6, well, the Wisconsin trip, getting back to that one, I brought all the bottles back to all my friends, but I had it scheduled to have lunch with this friend and talk bourbon and give him his 2 bottles, and then have lunch with do you know Kenyon Coco May? He basically runs Whiskey Mavens.
Oh, okay.
And he's I met him in Chicago. He bought 2 bottles and we had lunch with him. And then I met Josh Charleston, who runs Whisky Bourbon. So I got to meet him and basically during a storm. It was like a big, huge thunderstorm where we were downstairs in his podcast studio. He has got a little studio that he records stuff, and then he runs that whiskey group, and they do a lot of barrel picks and whatnot. But then Saturday, I just contacted the Great Lakes Distillery on their website.
Nice.
And they got back to me. And so we showed up Saturday morning. I met Guy. He is the owner there, and then also the operations manager. And they're in the process. The distiller wasn't there, but I got to go through their whole line, which then I found this really unique thing. My dad, when we were growing up, had a friend. He was in radio. Paul Kelly was his name, but his actual name is Bob Marsh. So I was sharing all this stuff this week from the Great Lakes Distillery, and all of a sudden I recognized the name, and I'm like, why is he sharing my stuff? So I go back, and he works at the distillery. So one of my dad's best friends, who was in radio that he always went out with, and I knew him because my dad knew him, and we did brewer games and stuff like that. My dad, I just talked to him and said, have you talked to him recently? He said, no. And then all of a sudden he works at the distillery that I just went in and got a full tour. And so we've been talking back and forth. So that's another way this little small world of whiskey and bourbon just ties everything back together, either new friends or old friends.
Yep.
But that's all put into that one trip. And it worked out to a T. I was showing up at those places. If we had an 11 o'clock lunch meeting, I was pulling into the parking lot at 10:59 and seeing them exactly at 11 o'clock. Then I saw my childhood friend. I was supposed to see him at 2:30, pulled into the parking lot, saw him right at 2. I mean, it was just insane how the whole thing was just falling together. And it seems like that whenever I do something bourbon whiskey related, that's what happens, opposed to the rest of my life where that never happens.
Right. Exactly. Like as I was telling you before, I just got back from Hawaii. There's so many things that happen in Hawaii, and it wasn't supposed to be a podcast trip. It was supposed to be, my friend has a timeshare. She invited me to go, and there's a Highlands games festival going on, and she thought I would enjoy it because we both have Irish and Scottish descent. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then all of a sudden there's this distillery, and then I met these people that have, while I was at the thing covering stuff, there was like TV stations, and they're like, hey, do you do any freelance work? And I was like, oh my gosh, like this trip turned into so much more than I could have ever expected. And I have to shout out to Melanie Wilson, because I have a lot of connections now that I didn't have, and I really appreciate.
Well, and also the cool thing about it is you eat and drink some of the best things that the world has to offer through this.
Exactly.
I mean, the pairings that the dinners that you're invited to.
When I went to the distillery, they made the best old fashioned I've ever had. It was with their bourbon, which was fantastic. But then they used macadamian simple syrup instead of regular simple syrup. And they used a chocolate bitters instead of an Angostura bitters. And OMG, it was by far, and it wasn't, and I thought, oh God, this is going to be really sweet, because between bourbon being sweet and those things being sweet, but it wasn't. Like, it was just a perfect, oh, so good.
Bardstown Bourbon Company.
Yep.
They age. They make full barrels, 53 gallons of their old fashioned, and put it in a barrel for 8 months.
Nice.
And then they serve it from the barrel.
Love it.
I mean, it's insane. The blending of the ingredients you know, when you mix old fashioned right there, they blend. But when you put it in a bourbon barrel for 8 months,
You get a
it
whole
takes
better
that
taste.
blending
Yeah.
aspect of everything mixing together to another level. And
Right,
it's
because
just,
then you're also getting the wood flavor. And
yeah, you get
that's fantastic.
everything into that. Plus the sugars are reacting to, I mean, you're basically doing alchemy. What goes in does not come out.
Mhm.
And it's like, it's delicious. Watershed Distillery here in Columbus, they do the same thing. Just put it in a barrel, and when you order an old fashioned, they basically stick the whiskey thief in and put it over 2 large ice cubes after they've, you know, taken the
Nice.
orange and did the zest on the side, and then they drop a couple cherries in, and then they just do that right
Nice.
in, and that's just the whole experience. Well, you know, there's so much drink mixology stuff that happens, you know.
Oh yeah. When I got home last night, 2 nights ago, I think. I pulled out the macadamia nut stuff. I pulled out the chocolate bitters. I pulled out the bourbon, and then I went to the fruit bowl. I'm like, oh, we don't have any oranges, because we still did the zest of orange with the. So I said, I'm gonna make you one, to my roommate, and I said, but I don't have the orange zest. But I did have a friend of mine made me an orange syrup, like a kind of a sort of a bitters, but not really. And I was like, well, the only thing I can do is put a teeny drop of that in, and it was good, but it wasn't the same as just using a natural orange. So
You
I
could
gotta
have
get an
used a
orange.
little bit of Parker Heritage
I don't have that
aged in orange carousel
either. Ooh,
barrels, because that would have
nice,
added the orange in there.
nice.
Some people, I mean, that Parker Heritage was either hit or miss with people. Some, I mean, the classic bourbon drinker couldn't take it, but just the everyday person absolutely thinks it's so unique. And, you know, I love to use it in my tastings. So it's just like, everybody doesn't like orange in their whiskey,
Right.
put it that way. But with that, when I was talking about what I like and what I don't like, but the rye, I love dill pickles. Okay. I love to eat dill pickles, but for whatever reason, that dill flavor in a rye and that almost like dissolved celery vegetable aspect is something I really despise. I just can't, I don't like it. But if you give me a rye that has a chocolate mint,
oh yeah,
I'm right there.
There you go.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I do like. So when I go about now, I thought my palate was evolving and evolving. And then we did a bunch of quick tastings. I do a rapid tasting with whiskey. We do and so it's about 15-20 minutes long, but we take one whiskey at a time, and we film 7, one right after the other. And he put up Laws out of Colorado, and it was a rye. And we had tasted the George Dickel Leopold Brothers 3-chamber pot still rye, which is delicious.
Yep.
And we had done we have a distillery here, Watershed, who had done a 6-year rye, but I had been in that barrel 2 times when it was 4 years and 5 years with the distiller. And it was delicious then, and they put it out, and we did that one, and it's really good. But then we got to the Laws, and I'm just thinking, well, we're tasting ryes, and maybe I'm changing a little bit. And then that one hit. And I get this, not only do I get the dill, but for some reason I get a formaldehyde, like an off taste. And
Did
then
you put a maraschino cherry in it or something?
all I can tell
that's
you,
what they do
all
with
I can
those.
tell you is it's like a combination of formaldehyde and urine. And that's what it tastes like to me. And that was before COVID, and it's after COVID. So it's like, I tell everybody, you might like this and you might not get that, but that's kind of what, you know, and so you got to be honest, you know. But when I do find a rye, it seems like a lot of people that once they know I like a rye, they kind of were like, I'll drink that one.
Yeah. So tell me, did you have both Peerlesses yet? And which one?
I just had, no, this is the first time I've had this Peerless. Now this is
tell me about it.
This is their double oak barrel strength. It was released at the distillery, and when we got there, they had a bunch of bottles, but they were gone. But this was there, And this is I think it's I want to say 200 milliliter bottle. No,
It's
no.
a flask size, whatever that is. Yeah.
Yeah. And I prefer this bottle. I wish all whiskey, I don't know about you, but I wish all whiskey was sold this size.
I don't, because then I would probably drink it all at once because it looks like it's
No,
little. And then you're,
no.
oh no, it's not though.
I taste so much whiskey. So, I've got hundreds of bottles all over here that I've tasted, and they go down, if it's someone, and I send some samples off, they're all at this level. And I can't really all the time go back and revisit them. So they're just all sitting around. But this,
You need to have more company.
I could get, you would not believe how many bottles I give people. Come over and I just give them cases of whiskey because it's already been done on a podcast. It's already been tasted. There's no way. Now, if I find a really good bottle, I'm just like putting it off to the side. But that's how I ended up with 500 bottles. The good bottles are off to the side, and the other, 400 have gone out the door. But it's kind of like I keep sending up another shelf and another shelf and another shelf, and I still now have so that's what I remember when I was telling you I forgot where I was going. So I took 2 cases to deliver of so I had to deliver 8 bottles. People had pre-ordered and I delivered them, but I took an extra 2 cases with me. So thinking I'm going to be getting rid of some of this alcohol. So I go to the Great Lakes Distillery. I walk out. He's like, he said, "What would you like to taste?" I'm like, okay, I'll taste the rye, the bourbon, and your barrel strength rye, your barrel strength bourbon. And I really like their rye. So I took their regular rye. And all of a sudden I look in the case and there's 6. And it's all their bourbons and all their ryes. So walk out of there with that. Then I was very good, and I found 2 bottles that there was a Kentucky Peerless or not Kentucky Peerless, Kentucky Spirit, Wild Turkey, Kentucky Spirit, and it was a single barrel strength. So I bought that because we don't see that here. And then I bought a New Riff. New Riff comes out. That's a northern Kentucky, right on the river across from Cincinnati. That's right. Where the distillery is. But they had this Balboa rye that they'd let everybody taste, but they sold out at the distillery. And you did. Well, I'm in Wisconsin, and there's 3 bottles on the shelf. So I'm like, and it was only $44. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Well, that's not bad.
So I tasted it. So I came home with those 2. But then I show up, and I was expecting a package, but all of a sudden my son comes over with all the packages, and there's David Schmear, who runs oh my God, Oak and Finish, I think it's called. Okay. But he does the senator and the representative and the tumbling dice.
Tumbling dice. I love
He's got 6 bottles at my front door. Plus, then Green River's doing an announcement, and I've got bottles on my front door. And so I actually thought I was getting rid of alcohol.
Nope.
But in reality,
no chance, Tiny.
In reality, I gained 2 bottles. It was 2 up 2. I'm like, that's just not fair. So that's been how it's been going.
I love
so
it.
This double oak barrel strength, perfect, and it's fantastic. This is one I should just drink all tonight.
And tell me the difference between that and the other Peerless bottle you have.
This bottle is 107.9. And this one's 113.8.
Wow.
So this is like the barrel strength unfiltered. This was a batch. I'm pretty sure the difference is that, but that's double oak 1.
But are they started at the same liquid or no? Same recipe?
Yeah, I believe this is Peerless bourbon yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
because they're both yes, for sure. This is a single barrel, and then
Oh.
this is their batch.
Well, that's why it's so hot. Yeah. But
Now,
does it taste
this-
hot?
What?
Does it taste hot? The little one?
So one of the things, have you had much Peerless?
Not much, but I've had some. Yes.
So their regular Peerless is really cinnamony.
Which
But
is
when
why I
they-
like it.
When they double oak it, it's always double oaked, and it's toasted barrels that they double oak in.
Mm-hmm.
And that one is insane because I'm picking up a lot of toasted
Cinnamon toast crunch.
imagine like when you cut wood with a saw.
Mm.
Now when you burn it, you get the burnt smell. But imagine if you cut it with the saw and you completely cut it perfectly, so the smell tasted like toasted wood. Like
Nice.
it's not the burnt, it's the toasted, and it's there with a little bit of cinnamon. So there's not the grain, it's more like the oak with the toast with the
Nice.
cinnamon. And
I
it's
like
not
toast and cinnamon and
not,
toasted cinnamon crunch.
not too much cinnamon, just the right amount. That's a really good balance. Now this one, when I had this one, so the first year this came out, it wasn't as wood forward. This year you pick up a lot of the oak in it.
Does it give you a name, an age statement on it?
Does it give you? I don't believe so. No.
Because if it's giving you more of a wood flavor, it's probably a little bit older. Is my guess.
I just think in that secondary. So I know Peerless is 4 to, I think they use a combination of 4 to 6 year
Mhm.
stuff, but there's no age statement on it. And then
Okay.
I'm sure when they put it into the secondary barrels, that if they're in there for a year or whatever,
Right.
you pick up that. That's not as toast. That's more tannin, the oak tannins, and this is the more toasted aspect between the two.
Nice.
There's not. I like both of them, but that
Which one do
is-
you prefer?
Oh, this is this one's on a different level.
Nice.
That's beautiful. And then you got your double oak chicken cock whiskey, which it's. Let me just put that in now. Let's see what happens.
Oh,
Now
boy.
it's not
Okay.
fair because one's doing bourbon and the other one's doing just regular whiskey. It's whiskey. So I'll
Right.
just put a little bit in there.
I mean, but if we have to talk about bottles, chicken cock
It's
wins.
not. There's no
that's a-
comparison. I think the chicken cock bottle is one of the best bottles out there.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous bottle.
So
And I kind of collect bottles. Like everybody that sends me stuff, if they send me multiple things, I take my favorite bottle and like I save it and I put it on the pride shelf, and I have all around my kitchen, and I have it all lit up. And then I since COVID started, I now have 2 giant cabinets that I put like, well, it starts with full bottles and then it ends with empty bottles. But I mean, I just, and like people come in and they're like, wow, it's like a serious whiskey bar in here. And I was like, yeah, it is, because I'm a serious whiskey person.
well, there's especially when you're podcasting. Once it just, what's really cool is when someone just sends something and they don't even contact you.
Mm-hmm.
It comes to your door with a card, and you're like, okay, sure, I'll try that.
Thanks. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
love it.
there's so many craft distilleries
Yeah.
all
That's
over
my
the
favorite
place.
part of the job, is when people just send me stuff and I'm like, oh, great. Well, now we'll have to talk about this. So there we go. There's another episode. So,
Yeah, that's for sure. And now the episodes have been, it's just kind of like, I try and do it. I know I'm trying podcast 2 times a week. So there's 8
That's a lot.
episodes a month, and it is either a subject matter or a specific bourbon or a specific distillery or a guest. So,
Right.
you just keep going as you go. And I can tell you this, I used to have bigger pours on the podcast, but I can't afford it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just,
right.
if you're, and I, for whatever reason, the only time I really ever socially drink is if I'm at a whiskey event where I have to completely keep myself under control, but I can socially drink and have a good time.
Right.
Whereas otherwise, it's just kind of like I could just probably, I have enough whiskey that I could be drinking, 30 pours a week, and that's just not, that just would turn you into an alcoholic. So
Right. Exactly.
you got to
I
control
know.
it.
I have, as I said, I have those 2 cabinets, and the top of one of them are all my different whiskey glasses. I have Glencairns, I have, tumblers, and I have rocks glasses. I've got a bunch of stuff. And then everything else is like open bottles. And then when I finish them, I have this area on the top of my kitchen cabinets that's lit up, and that's where I put them. And I try to, with the podcast, I try to keep like the most special, or the one I like the best if somebody sent me. If they sent me like 4 expressions, I'll pick the one that's my favorite. And that's when it's empty. That's the one that'll go up on the shelf.
So my evolution was first in the bedroom. The
In the
whiskey
bedroom?
was in our bedroom. We had a cabinet. So I used to have a place where we stored the alcohol. Well,
In your bedroom.
No, it wasn't in my bedroom. But when I
cabinet was in
started
your
getting
bedroom.
into whiskey, I kept it in my bedroom to make sure my kids weren't drinking my whiskey.
Oh, that's a good point.
So I had it on top of the cabinet. So then my wife's like, it's starting to infiltrate, every night I go to bed, I'm looking at, 40 bottles of whiskey. Don't want to
Does
do
she not
that.
like whiskey?
She loved, well, put it this way, I converted her to like
Good
whiskey.
job. Good job.
I've actually done podcasts, how it evolved. First it was smelling, then it was tasting. I mean, to this day, she loves Baker's and
Okay.
IW Harper 15 year.
there
IW
you go.
Harper. So, there's a certain amount, there's early times bottled in bond, which we use to make bourbon balls and wassail over the holidays. It's a fantastic whiskey, and that's probably the most bottles I think I've purchased 7 or 8 of them.
Wow.
So since I started, then you would, in second place, if you want to know, Old Tub. Have you had much Old Tub?
No, I haven't had Old Tub.
Old Tub is straight one level. It when it came out, it was $18.99. Then it went up to $24. Now it's $21.99. But if
who makes that? I've not.
That is the original brand of Jim Beam. That's what Jim Beam,
okay.
Jacob Beam. That's what their family's recipe. It's uncut, unfiltered. It's 100 proof, bottled in bond, but it's called Old Tub. But as far as taste goes, that one, it's not complicated. It's not where you sit there and sip it and try and it, but the one taste that comes out of it is just fantastic. So it tastes like bourbon. And then, how if you're drinking a barrel strength or you're drinking some of the double oaks, they're rich.
Yeah.
Well, this is a drinkable whiskey. This is what, like, at the last 3 fantasy baseball and football drafts, I'll drink Old Tub, and I can usually it ends up that either the bottle's finished off or a third or a half of the bottle's gone, because it's just something do you
have a bottle with you right now so I could see what the label looks like?
Yeah, I actually do. Hold on.
Of course you do, because you have a million bottles there.
Oh, I got it. They're over there, they're over there, they're back there, they're there.
I know, they're everywhere. Here, there, everywhere, says Dr. Seuss.
Yep. I do have it.
And for those of you watching, look at how beautiful his setup is. I mean, he's got gorgeous bottles, gorgeous lighting. When I first started watching his stuff, I thought, is this guy a lighting guy in Hollywood? Because this stuff is highlighted so well. It's beautiful.
Oh,
Chinese bourbon tasting. I love it.
so it wasn't always like that. I wish it
No,
was.
I know. You told me. So everyone who wants to hear the history, check out my podcast on May 10th and you'll hear it. Oh, there's Old Tub. Okay, I have not seen that. I have not seen that in California.
And this is just this sits here in Ohio on the shelf. It was, like I said, it started $18.99, went up to $24, but I think I picked that one up for $20.99, $21.
Still 20 anything is fantastic.
But this is how much I drank at that was the fantasy baseball. You can see it just kind of like it's drinkable and good, but it's not complicated. So I mean, sometimes you're just not looking for complicated, and that's what I go to. And then the next bottle that I bought the most of is IW Harper 15.
Oh,
now have you had that?
Where's that bottle? No, where's that bottle? Go get that bottle. I need to see these things. If you're going to talk about them, you got to show them, baby.
Now I got to get down on my hands and knees.
Oh, hands and knees. That's how you should be for bourbon. I love your sign, by the way. Chinese bourbon tasting room. I love that.
This bottle is beautiful. This bottle is
gorgeous. I can tell from now.
There you go.
Wow. Is that Canadian?
No, it is Stitzel Weller.
Oh, Stitzel Weller.
which is Bullet. And I'm telling you, some people, the proof is 80, but it's a 15-year, and it's just this beautiful decanter. But
how much does that run?
I just picked it up in Iowa for $88.
Okay.
Which for a 15-year isn't bad.
No,
now
it's
if you're going to be at the distillery, it's going to run you like $140.
Wow.
But so initially, the first bottle we ever bought was $100 at the distillery. She absolutely loved it, and then I saw it in Ohio for $65.
What?
At the time? Yeah, that was a couple of years ago, and then the next time it was $78. Then she got one for Christmas, so that's $4.
And this is your wife that likes it?
Yeah, and then $5. So this one is the next that we've had. This, I believe, is our 7th bottle.
Wow.
So I mean, I have a lot of Knob Creek, as you can see back there.
Yes, I noticed.
But I haven't finished the bottles. We're finishing these bottles. You get a lot of barrel picks and that.
When you started doing this with your wife, what did she think? Was she like, I'll join you with this. I'll taste it. I'll do whatever. I'll go on the road trips. What'd she say?
So here's initially it was the calendar, and then we were saying bullshit. So then I just was having some guys over. Okay. 4 or 5 guys over. We were having
in this beautiful set you have down in the basement.
What?
In this beautiful set you have down in the basement? No,
at the kitchen table. We were just at the kitchen table tasting.
So great.
We were trying to start to see what Scotch was to bourbon, and what Irish whiskey was, and what Japanese whiskey was. We were just getting, and then we met Super Nash, and then he started just sending it to us. So all of a sudden we're getting all these bourbons and all this whiskey and whatever. He would just, especially if it was something that he liked, okay, but he wasn't whatever, it would just come up to us. Like there's a couple scotches he would send us he basically was the reason why we started podcasting, because we could then afford to get stuff that was hard to get because he could get it.
Right.
So that led to that. But we were just having meetings, and then I had been doing an art podcast, and that had kind of fizzled out because it did well, but there was no compensation. So I had the skill to podcast. So I just said to my friend, well, let's just start doing a podcast. we had gone to Kentucky Bourbon Festival, had a great time. Now my wife went to Kentucky Bourbon Festival, but my wife is also a midwife. So the reason why
do you guys watch Call the Midwife on BBC?
She watched them all.
Love it.
That happens a lot late night in that's late night TV.
It's not over yet. They're still shooting, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just saying she's gone through the series, you know. It's kind of like I basically live Call the Midwife. She comes home, explains everything that happens, runs over it in her mind.
And you're like, I don't need to hear about cutting the cord again today. I don't.
That doesn't even, I mean, I honestly probably could deliver a shoulder dystocia.
Wow. That's pretty amazing. Like if you can, like,
I know if
memoirs,
I know
yeah,
what's going to happen if the baby's posterior. I know what's going to happen. I mean, I just know everything because I relive every birth. So,
right.
But anyways, getting back, so she basically there was a convention in Lexington.
Okay.
And one of the things that the woman had said, and I had just seen on my whiskey calendar, that the third week of Kentucky is Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and that's the week of our birthdays. And
nice.
So I was like, next year we should go to this, because I saw it while it was happening. And she's like, I was just looking at the convention, and that's the week after Kentucky Bourbon Festival. And they said, if you get there early, you can go to Kentucky. So all of a sudden we're going to Kentucky Bourbon Festival, and then spending the next week after that. So we were there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then the convention was the next week in Lexington. So I did the Kentucky Bourbon Trail and finished it. So I took her on what I could take her, but there was 3-4 days she was at the convention.
Of course.
And I'm on bus tours. So it was like 900 and some. I finished it. And when we came back, Martin kind of started talking to us, and then the podcast started. So that's kind of how it went.
Now, tell me about, again, I'm commandeering your show. Tell me about the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. How many Bourbon Boys do you have? And because I know that they show up sometimes, but not all the time. You're like the main guy.
So the initial guy that I started doing the podcast with, he moved to South Carolina, and he comes on maybe once every 2-3 months. We've done we do unique whiskeys. He loves Scotch. He loves peated Scotch. He loves different type of whiskeys. He loves, all that. His palate, he's a young guy. We call him Young Nose because his nose is so young that he can smell things that us old guys no longer can smell. Okay.
I love that.
That's how he got in the nickname Young Nose. Anyways, he comes on a couple times, probably 3-4 times a year. He was just on a couple weeks ago. And then there's Super Nash, who we met through while we were doing this. He basically sent us up a case of 1792 Foolproof, the year that it was the whiskey of the year, and nobody could get it. He was able to get us a case, sent it up, and we paid him through PayPal, you know what I mean? And ever since then, he's been a part. He drives up to Wisconsin at Christmas time and goes and does Christmas stuff with us here all around in Ohio. Wow. And he's from South Carolina. Who would think if you're in South Carolina that you would want to come up to Ohio? But he does.
Well, it's closer than if he came from California. Let me tell you that. So
then we had another member who just recently left. Is no longer with us. And then CT, which is Chris Thompson, we met him at last year. We did an event in Springfield, Ohio, and what's really crazy is that's like the bourbon belt of Ohio. It's probably,
I love that you call it the bourbon belt. That's amazing.
It's the #1 bourbon market in the United States. That awesome. Section, it's between Dayton, Columbus, and Cincinnati. It's right in that area, and they buy
Cincinnati.
Yep. So we basically went to an event there at a brewery where we were invited, and we were part of this big, huge tasting. And seriously, we had more people who knew we had like 50 people at this tasting of about 100 people that knew who we were and listened to the podcast.
That's awesome.
So here in Canton, Ohio, we don't have 50 people coming over tastings or no. They now about a year later, there's a lot of people who know, but that support, that was just random support, was amazing to us. And Chris was there. So he had somebody who had been involved with the Pappygate thing.
Oh,
able to get
Pappygate.
something that we got to taste that nobody else got to taste. So
what was that?
something that got me back. I'm not at
Oh,
liberty
you're not
to
allowed.
say we're not, because it just
Offline, you can show me the bottle. Yeah. Okay. Sure.
it's not, I would be showing you a barrel.
Oh,
Yeah. Did you watch Heist?
yes.
Did you ever see it? Yes. Okay. So just, they were stealing. So just what you thought while you watched it, they were stealing wild turkey barrels, and they were stealing these barrels, but they weren't stealing Pappy. They were just stealing Pappy bottles. That's just bullshit. That's not, they were stealing everything.
Speaking of movies with stealing, have you seen Angel Share, or the original Angel Share, which is really good? And it's about in the Hebrides, the Scotland Hebrides, this is based on a true story. There was a ship that was carrying lots of scotch, and it sank right outside of an island in the Hebrides, and there was very little scotch available on the island at the time, and they found out that this ship was carrying lots of scotch, and they said, oh, we're going to get it. And then they went and they said, oh crap, it's midnight on Saturday night, which means we can't go because it's Sunday. So they, like, for a day, 24 hours, they waited, and then they went back out and tried to pull out all these bottles from the sinking ship. And it was really cool. Angel Share, if you guys haven't seen it.
It was right off the shore, right? And then it was the whole, yes, I believe I've seen that movie.
Yeah.
But I probably saw it when I was
well, they redid it. They remade it. It was a black and white, and they remade it a few years ago. And I was actually impressed, because usually remakes, they change the whole thing.
Yeah, but
this remake was
but when they were going out to get the stuff off the shore, when they were trying to get the whiskey, the city government, the mayor was involved, where
once they brought it all back out, the government was trying to they were chasing them around the island and this whole thing, and they were trying
they were being secretive on how they were getting out there. They were just trying to follow them to see if they're going, while they were following them. They were sending people.
Story. These people wanted this whiskey. They said, well, it sunk. If no one's going to go out and get it, we're going to go get it. And the government was like, oh, well, if you got it, we should get it. No. If the government wanted it, they should have sent people to go get it. They did not. I love it. Yes. And then there's another show that was that wasn't Angel Share. That was
there's The Water of Life, which that made me want to go to Scotland.
Okay. So The Water of Life guys, the director, Greg Swartz, and one of the producers, Alphonse, they were the guys who came with me to Ireland. So my entire Ireland trip,
that was great.
With Ireland. Yeah.
That was awesome.
So my entire Ireland trip to Ireland, I was with the Water of Life guys, and we had so much fun. And right now they're in Germany working on something for beer, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say, but they're right now working on something for beer. So they're great guys. I love them. I love working with them. And if you guys like The Water of Life, then you should check out my podcast, because this season, the first at least half is all with them. So
yeah, for sure. And I suggest watching The Water of Life, because it really captured the essence of the distillers, and it made me realize that distilling and families and friends that distill here in America, that culture is the same culture of people doing the same thing over there.
It is. It totally is.
It's a type of person, right? they are hardworking, they are humble. You don't get any, there's no there when you go visit these places, it is really, whiskey has this negative connotation that it makes people into assholes. I know, but the people who enjoy and properly consume whiskey and make whiskey are completely the opposite. They are some of the best people, so grounded in what they're doing and
Agreed.
understanding what life is about. And you
Agreed.
get to these people and they are friendly and willing to share almost it's like you wouldn't think you'd be able to go over to Ireland or Scotland and say you're a podcast and walk in and think that they will just welcome you in and let you taste their stuff from a barrel or whatever.
Said, come with me, because especially Ireland trying to rebuild. I mean, they were the first whiskey, like the boom of whiskey. And then between the the Civil War in Ireland and Prohibition with us, like it killed them. They had more whiskey exports to the US than any other country. And then between their war and our Prohibition, they died. They went down to 2, which is why I went to Ireland and I wanted to like say, hey, like they're trying to rebuild, they're trying to like bring it back 100 years later. It's really important. And the stuff they're making is fantastic. If it's pot still and they're using half unmalted barley and half malted barley, it's a whole different flavor than what you'd get in bourbon or rye or anything that we do here in America. Even the single malts are different than what they do in Ireland, which is why I wanted to go there. But if you guys can get a hold of any of these newer whiskeys from Ireland, it's a whole different world and it's a great flavor profile. And I think it's something that people would enjoy.
Even the what they're doing, even the older Irish distilleries, everything is when you were initially looking at the shelf in America of Irish whiskey, it was this big.
No,
Now,
100 years ago, 100 years ago, it was the biggest spot.
Right. But what I'm saying, even you had Teeling, you had Bushmills, you had Tullamore Dew, and there wasn't a lot. But now,
and Jameson,
and Jameson,
it was Jameson and Bushmills was it?
Yeah,
until the last 10 years.
Shelf, if you're taking this much, now it's even what Teeling is doing. Jameson is doing their things, but and I'm not going to talk about Proper 12, but Proper 12 has its place because, in my opinion, it might not.
They have an apple now. Proper 12. Apple.
Well, they're like the Canadian Club of Irish whiskey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Teeling has, first of all, they took a lot of stuff from Cooley, which was their father's distillery in North Ireland, so they were able to keep a lot of that stock and use it when they redeveloped Teeling. And then since they redeveloped Teeling in Dublin, which is the first new distillery in Dublin for over 100 years, and it used to have, I don't even know how many, like a gazillion, they've been doing so much with their product. Like first of all, they blended a lot of their stuff with their old stuff, but since then they've been making
old stuff,
bunch of new stuff, and it's
that's
great.
old.
Yeah, like and if you're a peated person, they have their what was it called? It was Black Pit, I think. I mean, it's like they use real Irish peat. They don't go to Scotland. They don't get the Scottish peat. They use Irish peat. And so there's a lot of different, so people that are into peat, like go ahead and try the Black Pits. And people that are just into various, if you want to really expand your whiskey knowledge and your palate, like I love bourbon, I love rye, I love all the American stuff. But, as I continue, I started, as I said, with Maker's Mark, but as I continue to like try different things, it's like trying completely different beverages. It's like not just going, oh, I'm going to have a gin, I'm going to have a vodka. No, you can try all these different
I compare
and did so many
whiskey
things.
to food pairings. For instance, Irish whiskey is like a fruit salad. There's a lot of fruit. It's fruity.
There's a
The
lot of
notes,
fruit,
it's
yes.
light and fruity. Whereas,
And that's the barley that's not.
Mhm. yeah,
that's the raw barley.
I enjoy it. Then you get into, I always think of bourbons as dessert.
Because it's
like,
very sweet.
you know, ryes are just your corned beef, you know, your Reuben sandwich. It's
Yep.
like they all have their special places in the palate. I mean, it's kind of like if you get a hold people don't understand here, especially in America, if you get a hold of a really good Japanese whiskey, one that's not bullshit,
Right.
because you got to watch out, because the Japanese are still trying to get over that. But you find a really good Japanese whiskey, it's fantastic, but
Yeah.
it's single malt. It's
Right.
the same thing.
A lot of things with Japanese they would take Scotch and they would, re-age it, and then they call it Japanese. Well, now they have new laws where you can't do that.
And
But-
some of their finishing barrels are
but
fantastic.
yes, some of their finishing barrels are fantastic, but because they looked so much into like how are the Scotch doing their stuff, and they learned so much from the Scotch and the Irish and the Americans, that now they're making really great stuff without having to source, and now they're figuring out how to finish their stuff to make it even better.
So there's this place in Thornton, Illinois. It's in the brewery that used to brew beer in Prohibition for Al Capone. But they now put a distillery in there. It is called the Thornton Distilling Company, and they make Dead Drop bourbon. Now that is the coolest.
That is a
their
great
label is
label.
fantastic. I mean, you look through that teardrop and you can see the back label showing something, a key. And then each side is each of the people who co-own it. With bourbon, they're doing something with, with different, they make vodka and they make a rum. So each label, it's similar, but they're doing different things.
Right.
But the cool thing about them is the master distiller, which is Ari, he basically trained in Edinburgh, Scotland for a year.
Did he go to the school there?
I think
I
so.
can't think of it.
I think he was at the school, and then he did an apprenticeship at the distilleries.
Nice.
So he came back, and him and his friend started this distillery to do bourbon. But you could tell his passion is single malt. So they've been doing single malts. Now they don't have any released, but the one thing is that they found a peat bog in Illinois.
What?
And they basically used Illinois peat to smoke their malt over the malt.
There's a peat bog in Illinois.
Yes, there is.
What's the weather like in Illinois? Like, I had no idea.
It's like in Midwestern lake, like Minnesota and all those lakes, those bogs are all out there. But there is but like I said, there's some wetlands right in northern Illinois leading into Wisconsin that are protected. But I'm sure that's where the peat bog is, because it's got to be released. It was a lake, then it wasn't a lake, and then it was marsh, and then it's got to get to the bog level. But they got the owners of the peat bog who don't harvest it.
Wow.
To give them peat, and they basically took it to their malt, the place that does their malt, and had them blow the Illinois peat over the top. And I'm not a big fan of peat, but this was, I got to taste it right out of the barrel, and I'm like, it was spectacular. It was like if you could take the perfect amount of peat and put it in to the single malt and make it for somebody who doesn't like peat, they had done it.
Perfect. I'm gonna have to try it because I want the tiniest amount of peat. I like it if I'm having a barbecue and I'm doing barbecue food. I like the teeniest I like stuff finished in peat so that it gives it a little flavor that goes with your barbecue. But if the whole thing is peat and I just taste iodine, I don't want it.
No, me neither. I can't take I Ardbeg. There's some Ardbegs that just taste rank to me.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, but you got to develop your palate. And I'm like,
But
no.
developing your palate to like that
Shit.
is not.
It's like, no,
So-
I don't.
Although I
like,
will say they have a 5-year Ardbeg that that I had on the show, and it was actually pretty good because it wasn't overly peated. And I like a lot of things that are finished in peated casks because it just gives it the little bit of smoky flavor at the end. But if it's a full peat, my palate hasn't adjusted to that quite yet.
I don't want, but like I straight out don't want. There's so much whiskey I love and taste and like that I'm not. I mean, I worked hard to find the ryes initially.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I was willing to do that because it wasn't rancid to me. But it's when it comes to peat. Now, Justin from Justin's House of Bourbon, I had gone on a couple barrel picks with him. And the 1 year, and then when I started going on the next year for the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, he said, he looked straight at me the first one and he goes, how's your palate now towards rye? Because he knew that you're going to evolve your palates towards rye. Usually people who don't like ryes eventually find ryes they like and then like it a little bit more because it just adjusts. I think rye has a spice to it.
It does.
That wakes up certain people's palates. And then there's the people who can't taste. They don't taste those are the people who like rye and barrel strengths, you know, and they're always like, well, I really don't like that Basil Hayden because it's just too light and whatever. And I'm just like, well, that's because you're acting like somehow you're superior to everybody that you drink the barrel strengths and everything. And in reality, your taste buds have been so fried or they weren't there in the first place that the only thing you taste is those, and you can't taste the Basil Haydens or you can't taste the 80 proof
you really
Irish
need
whiskeys.
to start with the lower proof things and work your way up, because if you don't, then you're going to just ruin your palate for really good whiskeys.
So.
So.
I mean, I where I get palate fatigue if I do too many, like let's say I do 2 podcasts and then I go do a weekend thing. By Sunday, even though I'm not drinking, I can feel my tongue telling me no more.
Don't put anything. Yes.
Don't give me any more whiskey. I'm like, and then I listen to it. So yeah, you just burn it out sometimes.
Yeah. When I was in Hawaii, I was like, okay, I'm not going to drink too much here because I'm only going to one place. And then that's it. But then I was like, oh, there's all these other Hawaiian cocktails that I haven't tried. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try some Hawaiian cocktails. And then, you know, like 3 days in, I told my friend, I was like, okay, I drank too much last night. She goes, how do you know? I said, well, I have a headache this morning, which means I drank too many sugary drinks.
Yes, because
that doesn't happen
delivery
with whiskey.
system is insane.
Yeah. I was like, but also, you know, I know last night I was not paying attention to what I was drinking because I was talking about my dog who has an injury that might have to have his foot amputated. So I was kind of just not paying attention. I said, I don't give a shit. I'm just going to drink because my dog might lose his leg and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But I said, so
that's multi levels of not liking it.
Yes. So I said, so I'm not going to drink anymore on this trip unless there's something new I haven't tried or some sort of tropical drink I haven't tried. And that's it. I'll drink. And that's what I did for the rest of the weekend. And it was great. It was fantastic.
Yeah. It was just that's one thing that if you do this like we do, that I really feel that every once in a while, as you're starting out, it bites you, but as you get more into this, the goal is to be smart enough not to let it bite you.
Exactly.
That's the whole goal.
Exactly.
But I always find that if you start adding sugar into stuff, you know, it's not the same. You can have 4 pours of barrel strength bourbon and you're fine, but you put that same 4 pours into sugary drinks and all of a sudden the party's started.
Yep, exactly.
So,
And I noticed that in my late 20s, early 30s, when I started getting into whiskey. I don't feel horrible if I have just whiskey. I feel
well,
horrible if
you
I
know that
have
you
freaking
do
mixed drinks.
realize that the reason why when you drink good bourbon, you don't feel horrible is because one, they distilled it and took out all the chemicals that make you
Yep.
feel horrible.
Yep.
And especially when you're dealing with some pot still, they can really get those chemicals out. And then when you age it, it takes out the chemicals. That's why a
Yep.
lot of age needs to happen to those column stilled
Exactly.
stuff. Age has to take those impurities out. So when you're getting
Exactly.
into 9-10 years, you've got those impurities out. But if you're going to be drinking that at 2-3 years, that's not going to be good. But you go to, let's say, Neely, and they're pot distilling, and they're putting stuff out at 2-3 years, and they're really paying attention to what they're doing, they can take that
that's
out
why I
and
kind of
still
stopped
have
with
good.
wine, because like wine only goes so far, and depending on what kind of wine you're getting sulfites and tannins, and some of those sulfites and tannins are like headache causing. And I'm like, I had 2 glasses, I didn't even feel tipsy yet I had a hangover the next day. That is not okay. Like, you shouldn't, like,
No.
that is not a good drinking experience. You
But
should
you
be able
get-
to drink 2 glasses
But you get
of wine.
a good wine, and there's no sulfates in it, and they
Right.
know how to do. They know what they're doing, and they age it a little bit in barrels. And
Right. But then you got to
Then you-
spend how much extra money for that 1 glass of wine at dinner? It's like,
Yeah.
I love this glass, and it would taste amazing. And I'd be at this dinner having a steak dinner, and it was so good. And the next day I'm like, I have a headache. And I'm like, I had 2 glasses. This shouldn't happen. Like, no.
I agree. Now, rum, that's a whole different story for me,
Because
because
that's
rum,
all sugar. Yeah.
yeah, but rum does not. I could just drink rum all day long. I should have been a pirate, I tell people, because I would drink rum. So my friends, we'd go to New York, and it was either rum or whiskey. I tell them that I don't mix, and they try and drink me under the table. So one night we drink rum. At $450 later, they'd spend on me trying to get me drunk. I'd wake up the next morning at 6 o'clock, said, "You guys want to go see Katie Couric,
Couric
and
at the Today Show, yeah.
let's go." And they'd be like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" I'm like, "This is your idea." And I would do it to them and then same thing. It's like one night they finally tried whiskey on me, and it's the same thing. I just stuck to whiskey that night. I woke up, was fine. They are all
Well,
just
I tried this one night where I was at an Emmy after party, and I was like, okay, I've already tested whiskey. Like, I can drink this amount of whiskey and be fine the next day. No headache, no stomach ache, no like nothing. But they were serving tequila at the after party with an iced block thing where they would pour the thing through and it would go through the whole
Mhm.
thing and then come down.
chill it.
Yeah, it was a cute little thing. And I thought, okay, well, I keep hearing, people keep telling me, this is so many years ago, I keep hearing that if you just stick with one type of liquor instead of mixing, you'll be fine. So I was like, okay, well, it's not whiskey because they only had crap whiskey there, and I was not going to drink it. So I said, I'll do this tequila because it's coming down, it's doing this fun thing. And I was picking up the stuff for all my friends. So like I'd get one, but by the time they did the whole ice block thing for every single person, I was like, okay, well, I already drank mine, so I need another one. And so they do another one, and then I'm like, okay, by 11:30, I was like, I was gone. I was totally gone. And the next day, I woke up in different clothes in a hotel room, and I said, what's happening right now?
No,
Said, oh, you got drunk and you said you loved Chris in the elevator. I said, Chris who? And I was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, you because you had, and I was like, I believed people when they said if you just have the one liquor, it doesn't matter, but it does, because if I had that many whiskeys, I would have been fine,
right.
because I've had that many whiskeys before and
can't
since
compare.
then, and it was fine.
I mean, so the thing that was getting me is that I would drink 3-4 bourbons on the podcast, no problem. So we did the Irish whiskey podcast for St. Patrick's Day,
Nice.
and I had 4 pours, 80 proof, not barrel strength,
boy.
just 80 proof.
Okay.
And I went upstairs and my wife was like, "You are slurring your words. What the hell happened?" I'm like, "I don't know." So Irish whiskey will get me drunker than barrel strength bourbon.
Because you're used to barrel strength bourbon. I was not, I'm still not. Okay. I don't do tequila unless I have to. And I had the other night in Hawaii, I had something with tequila, but I was like, I only want one because I know what tequila does to me.
Yeah.
But like, I know what Irish and Scottish whiskey do to me and what rye does to me and what bourbon does to me. So
Right.
like, if I'm having certain things, I'm like, I know where my limit is. And this is where I need to stop.
I think you're right on that. I do. The only thing I've never ever even come close to my limit is Japanese. I got to find out where I'm at with that.
I have to find out where I'm at with that too, because I haven't had enough of that. I've had
I've
a little bit of it,
but I don't think I've ever gotten drunk on it. Like I'm not, you do the podcast, you're tasting it, it's delicious, but I'm not out like tonight. You saw we've had a couple pours and I probably had a total of 1 actual pour,
and
with the little bit and the same thing. And, so you're not trying to get drunk. It's tomorrow's work. And
now, have you had sochu and all these other things that are supposedly like more popular in Japan? Because I did a show with a guy he does sochu and he does all these other things. I also did a podcast with a guy who has made a board game with all these different countries worth of drinks, and it's called Distilled, and it's a very fun game. And if you haven't looked into it, you should look into it. It's fun because it basically, you inherit a distillery from a long lost relative, and then you have to figure out how to make it work and sustain itself. Which originally he was only going to do whiskey because he thought of this while he was on a trip to Ireland. But then he thought, well,
when you
let's
play it,
expand it.
Do you drink when you play it?
You can.
Okay, so it's not an actual board drinking whiskey game. It's just a whiskey game.
Well, no, it's a board game, and you have cards and dice.
But you don't have to drink because of the whiskey.
No, it's not a drinking game, but you can drink with it if you wanted to.
We have a board game which is trivia.
Okay.
And it's designed that if you miss the trivia question, if you don't know it, and then you lead and this thing happens, you have to drink. So
that's a drinking game. Yeah,
it's not like Pass Out where you just get drunk. And the whole idea, this actually, your knowledge can keep you from getting buzzed. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. You still get to keep your wits at the end. Someone wins or whatever, but it's pretty cool game. We play it when we go to Kentucky Bourbon Festival.
Yeah, no, it's a cool game. This game called Distilled. He's actually a professor and teaches how to make virtual games. And then one day he decided, I want to make a board game, like a real board game, like back in my youth. Like I'm going to do it. And it's been very successful, and it's really fun.
Picked the right time.
Yeah.
Because board games came back to millennials and Generation Xers because of COVID, because you had to do something. Sure. My son is totally into Catan, and he somehow tricks me into screwing me over in that game every time he comes home.
Awesome. Well, yeah, this game is great. It's fun. I just got a copy of it because I was a crowdfunding supporter. Okay. And because I was a crowdfunding supporter, I was able to get extra cards, extra this, extra that. So when I play it, I'm inviting people over soon to play it. But when we play it, I'm going to have all this extra stuff that you can't get with the basic plan. But once you like, if you want to buy extra cards, extra whatever, you can do that. That's
Yeah,
pretty
that
cool.
if you have people over, then you can get rid of some of your whiskey.
Exactly. Exactly.
I just keep telling my wife we need to have more people over. She's like, why? Because I got to get rid of some of this whiskey.
Exactly. I have too many like I was saying, I have 2 cabinets that I've added since COVID, and it's like 1.5 full of whiskey, and then the other is like bottles I want to keep and glasses I want to use. But like, I mean, they're taller than me, these cabinets. So
Well, what's crazy is that I have so much glassware. Initially, I purchased glassware before I was going. Now I've acquired glassware. So I used to have cabinets that I was able to keep glassware in, but those cabinets now I keep whiskey in.
right.
Then it's trying to
Exactly.
find out where you're going to keep your glassware. But I have an extensive glassware collection with all the different glasses right at my fingertips here.
Exactly. I shouldn't say this, but in the middle of the pandemic, I had a new roommate that came in, and I had just gotten the first cabinet, and it had all this new stuff. And then I found out this guy was an alcoholic and he liked all this stuff. So he put things in front of bottles so that I wouldn't know he was drinking them until I went to go drink them. And then like they were empty. So
Yeah, and so
and that's what I love about bottle share parties is like you can bring, like, if you have excess of this whiskey or excess of that whiskey and you're like, oh, I like this, but you know what, I feel like I want to share this, then you can take it to a bottle share party and like share it. And then you don't have to feel like I have a museum at home with 500 bottles of untouched whiskey, and
I keep doing that, but it's now coming at a rate that somehow I'm going to have to figure something out. But I'll figure it out. Just get more guys on my podcast.
There you
Whenever they
go.
come over, they know they're leaving with a case.
There you go.
A case
There
of
you go.
something. And anyways, all right. So that was a wonderful podcast. I think we're at almost 2 hours. So that was
a
fun.
long time.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Thanks for hanging out tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah. What I'll do is do a little finish here, hit this, and we're gonna get off the audio podcast. Okay. So if you want to, you plug your Barrel Room Chronicles and where they can meet and get stuff
Okay.
and whatever. And
So if you guys want to watch my podcast, it's barrelroomchronicles.com. We are on Apple, iPhone, iHeartRadio, Google, Spotify especially. You can watch the video on Spotify also, and we are also on like so many others for the audio, but for Spotify and YouTube is the visual if you want to see it.
so YouTube, did you see that they're introducing us to be able to actually be part of a podcast community? They're actually going to I saw that. I'm going to be doing that quick.
Yep.
Because if we could jump on that quick, I think we got a shot.
Yeah,
Because
I feel
right
so
now we
too.
kind of squander amongst the big guys, you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
it's like, so yeah, get on as an actual podcast. So I was looking at that today. So that's kind of excellent. So we're www.scotchybourbonboys.com for everything Scotchy Bourbon Boys. You can get these nice Glencairns, you can get t-shirts, bourbon balls. Check us out there. And then also all the major podcast formats that what we just mentioned. And then also we are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. So check us out there. And remember, everybody, when you go out there, this good bourbon, good whiskey equals good friends and good times. And make sure that you go out there and live your life
responsibly.
Drink responsibly.
Drink responsibly.
But live dangerously.
Yes.
Yes.
And if anyone wants to find out where we are, we're at barrelroomchronicles.com, and you can get all of our links to all of the different platforms right there. You can see us on YouTube or Spotify, Anchor, which now is Spotify, and all these others. So feel free to check us out.
Check it out. All right, everybody. Little Steve-O is going to take us out.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you, I tell you, I tell you we must die.
Hey, Scotchy Bourbon Boys fans, this is Alan Bishop, Indiana's alchemist of the Black Forest. So I'm tuning in here today to tell you all about the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute channel on YouTube. If you're at all interested in the art of distilling, whether it be home distilling or professional distilling, and the intense geekery that goes into that process, then check out the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube. I promise you're going to learn something you didn't know before about the art.